Experts in the nation's oil and gas sector have called on the federal government and other stakeholders to mitigate the devastating impacts of oil spills on the people and the environment. That's the consensus reached at the two-day oil spill management technical workshop, which took place in Port Harcourt. Participants at the workshop include regulators, oil and gas experts, representatives of companies from the sector, as well as retired and serving workers. They say the menace in that region contributes to further environmental degradation, and damaged lines may go unnoticed for days, with repair of the damaged pipes taken even longer. Policy for upgrading the degraded environment, such as stoppage of oil spillage and gas flaring, flooding, pollution and erosion, have been a tall dream, and residents of the areas appear hopeless. And for now, we're being joined by the Chief Executive Officer of Clean Nigeria Associates, Emeka Ezeaku, to discuss environmental pollution and degradation of the Niger Delta as a result of oil spill and gas flares. Good afternoon. Welcome to Newsday.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Good to have you.
Yes, I was curious and looked at your company's website. Wonderful, by the way. That's Clean Nigeria Associates. I see there that the objective is to promote the science of protecting, preserving, restoring the environment after oil spill, and to be a leading provider of human capacity development. How much progress have you made in realizing this objective, specifically in the Niger Delta?
Okay, I think to a large extent, I think we've made significant progress because so basically I'd like to explain why we have that objective as an organization, because Clean Nigeria Associates is a not-for-profit organization. It's a cooperative set up by the oil and gas industries to mitigate, or rather to respond to major spills. And so what it then means is that when these companies have major spills, instead of allowing those things stay for some time in the environment, which is what they basically degrades the environment, we come in spontaneously and then respond to those spills and ensure that those potential impacts are not left in the environment. However, we are not there because a couple of other oil and gas operators, a reasonable number of them, are not members of the cooperative, because it's a cooperative that only works for you if you're a member. And so sometimes when those people have spills, because they are not members of the cooperative, we end up not being there. And before all the discussions to get in there and attend to that spill will be resolved, the impacts we talk about in the Niger Delta, the harm is already done. And so when you ask whether we have achieved that objective, yes, it's a journey, we are there. But what is basically stalling full achievement of that potential is that the government agencies that are required to ensure that operators do the needful by being members of the cooperative, which is a requirement by law, that they actually become members, such that when eventually there's a spill, because the truth is, you never can say you will operate oil and gas without mishaps. There are always accidents. And when those things happen, you're supposed to have some bit of contingency arrangement, which is where this cooperative comes in. So just to answer your question, we are on the journey, but we actually require a whole lot of push from government agencies and regulators to ensure that everybody in that sector does the needful.
Definitely. So let's talk about the recent destruction of I'm sure you must have heard of it, the MT Tura II. Now, some stakeholders have criticized the military's approach to combating oil theft, particularly the practice of burning seized vessels. Yeah. I want to know what your thoughts are about this one, and I want to also ask you, what alternative methods or strategies does your organization or even the government should start looking to have in place to address this oil spillage that is affecting or causing environmental harm?
Okay, so my straight answer to that is that two wrongs don't make a right. Someone steals oil, someone catches the person who steals the oil and then pollutes the environment with the oil. So the two wrongs don't make a right. But I also know that the government has also tried a couple of times to set up strategies to ensure that when this oil are seized, they are taking either to the refineries. But unfortunately for us, some of our refineries are currently not working. So where they would take that oil is still something that hasn't been sorted out. But I think, like I said in the first instance, the government has a whole lot to do in terms of encouraging these military personnel who actually do their job by seizing this stolen crude oil, by taking it off them, because they also don't have where to keep it. And so when you leave it with them, probably the only option they have will be to do away with it. But because that oil is a national asset, once it is seized, it is expected that the federal government should take back what belongs to them and not allowing the military guys to deal with the way they choose. But honestly speaking, I think they are not doing us any favor. They've done a good job by seizing it, but then polluting the environment with it now takes away the value of the good work they've done.
Indeed. Now, I'm just wondering, do you think there's enough pressure on the companies that are actually responsible for contributing to this environmental degradation? Do you think the pressure is enough or not?
Okay, so there are two things here. When you talk about the companies that cause the degradation, if someone's oil is stolen, that's a different. The man is not happy that his oil is stolen. He would rather be trying to find out who took his oil and is chasing the oil. But if you talk about the degradation part, where maybe in the course of selling the oil, there is already a spill. And that's where we come in. It doesn't matter whether it is you that caused it accidentally or someone in the course of stealing oil causes it. What is the major objective for Clean Nigeria Associates is that oil should not be left free-flowing in the environment because of the long-term effect they will have. So if such members or such operator is a member of CNA, whether it was them that caused it or they were stealing their oil, it is their oil, so we come in and clean the environment, and then they can be handling the rest of the issues down the line. So what we're basically saying is, it doesn't matter whether it is sabotage or accidental spill. The issue is that they have the same effect on the environment and on the people. And so we are encouraging all operators to have that contingency arrangement in place so that when that incident happens, you have someone whose responsibility it is to help you deal with that and ensure that the community around you is not impacted by the work you do.
I'm very glad you've spoken about these communities that are impacted, because a lot of local communities in the Niger Delta, of course, depend on fishing for their livelihoods, and this industry is being severely impacted by pollution and habitat loss. So when we look at the significant portion of the financial cost of environmental degradation caused by oil spillage, how exactly is Clean Nigeria Associates working to ensure that these communities, to an extent, receive the support and compensation that they deserve?
Okay, that is way out of our mandate. So we're basically an emergency management organization. The rest of the issues after we are done with the emergencies is for the owner of the facility to deal with their respective stakeholders. So, but ours is, even if you're going to get compensated, you shouldn't be dead before you get compensated. The oil should be taken away from there. Your livelihood should be protected. And then you can discuss the rest of the issues down the line.
Very well said indeed. But I'd like to expand this beyond, Clean Nigeria Associates, if you don't mind. I was reading this paper that was published barely a month ago, and it did say that the African Niger Delta, which of course happens to be one of the world's most important wetlands, does not have the ecological effects of intensive oil exploitation and global change properly documented. Do you concur with this view?
Yes, to a large extent I do, because when you talk about documentation, so you now look at the number of oil theft sites happening and the incidents that follow. And then at the end of the day, it's now difficult to say who owns the incident or who doesn't own the incident. And it is only when someone has taken ownership of an incident, you can go into documentation to say what is the next line in terms of remediation and all the rest. So a whole lot is in contention. And then and I like the question you brought forward. So one of the things that has bothered us as Clean Nigeria Associates is the fact that not all of oil and gas operators are known to us. Yes, because first of all, we have only 16 members, and we know that there are a lot more than that operating in this country. And so when these people are not even known to organizations like us and they have incidents in the remote locations of the Niger Delta, who is going to take a record of that? So I think in terms of the way the regulators have handled the issues with oil and gas operators and transparency in terms of oil spill reporting and handling, it can only be improved if they are known to organizations like Clean Nigeria Associates, who will eventually respond and then tell you this is what happened there and this is how. But when they are not even known to us, how do you then record what happens in their locations?
Well, I want to talk about gas flaring, because that's also another part of, that contributes to degradation. And I want to know what your thoughts are, because there are people that have advocated for more sustainable practices. What is your perspective on the future of gas flaring in Nigeria?
Gas flaring, I think the basic reason why we flare gas, for me, is the fact that we haven't developed enough infrastructure to utilize the gas. Probably we also have a lot more than we can use locally, and then the projects that would take them to the international market is something the government, I know, has been looking at, but I don't know how successful they've been with that. But when we talk about gas utilization, it is the way to go, is the energy for the future. And most third world countries are struggling with it, because you need to develop the infrastructures that will enable you, take full advantage of it. So I think it's on the side of government and oil and gas operators to develop the infrastructure that will enable us harness those resources that God has given to us, which is much more cleaner than what we are relying on currently.
Sorry, if you don't mind, because you said a lot of West African and even third world countries rather are dealing with this. So I'm wondering, aren't there any success stories or best practices from other regions or other countries around the world that could serve as models for us in third world countries in addressing this environmental pollution, be it oil spillage, be it gas flaring in the Niger Delta?
Okay, so part of what we're discussing, so let me just take you back a little bit. Part of what we're discussing is still what is obtainable globally. So there's a convention to which Nigeria signed onto, which is the OPRC convention, which is basically what ensures that you have an arrangement for people to come together to deal with spills. Yeah? Those are best practices, and what Clean Nigeria Association is doing is best practice. So something as little as that, we are still struggling with it. And then on the issue of gas, where you spoke, no matter how much we speak about gas, the infrastructure to use gas is what is missing. So I'll give you a very basic example. We still buy gas in bottles to take back to our homes. In most developed countries, if you're talking about best practices, there are gas lines piped to houses, and people, just like you buy your recharge card, you pay to get those gas to cook. And so there's no case of it is stolen. If you don't pay, you don't get it. There's no time MTN has come to tell us that people are stealing their airtime, because if you don't pay, you don't get it. So those kind of infrastructure, starting with what we call urban development, laying the lines and having those central, those are the things that are basically missing. So whether we like it or not, the infrastructure is what needs to be in place for, no matter what anybody tells us, the gas is there, it's there, but there has to be a process to utilize it. It's just like when you talk about electric cars that requires charging points. You first of all have to build those places where you charge them before you start bringing the cars. Yeah, so that's why we're not in a hurry to bring those cars, except you have to go when your energy finishes midway on the road, and then I don't know what else you're going to do. So basically, well, I hope you carry a big power bank that could charge you. But that's the point. So the infrastructure for gas utilization is what we need to deal with, whether it is for export or for local utilization, and that's where government comes in.
Well, you've spoken very well, and we certainly enjoyed your insightful analysis. Chief Executive Officer of Clean Niger Associates, Mr. Emeka Ezeaku, thank you for joining us here on Newsday.